the one, the only Benzion. Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Iyun Benzion. Today's daf is Gittin daf Iyun Aleph number 71. Very interesting Gemara today. The Gemara starts off on Iyun Aleph and Aleph on the top. Amar Rav Kana Marav Cheresh Yachal Dabrim B'toch Akav Kosim and Osim Gel Ishto. Even though a Cheresh, and he's talking about a Cheresh who's both deaf and mute, like Helen Keller, right? No das. A male Helen Keller. He could write instructions to write a get and give it to his wife. He can write a get for my wife, sign it, and give it to my wife. And people could actually go and carry out his orders, and it would be a valid get. Now, how is it possible? Someone who's a Cheresh lacks das. Cheresh Shotav Akatan lack das. If you lack das, you can't give a get midal raisa, right? You see on Ayin Aleph and the base, the Gemara quotes from Mesachas Yevamos, right? If you got married and then you became a cheresh, you can't divorce your wife. Liotzi olamis, you can't divorce her because you need das to give a get, and seemingly that precludes even writing. Writing is not good enough. And the further to bolster the question, yesterday's Iyun Benzion, we focused on the halacha which came up from Yochanan yesterday. And Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish argued about it. Rabbi Yochanan says, if someone said write a get from his wife and then achzu kordaikas, he became mentally deranged. He was delusional, as I explained. He believed things that weren't true, or he had hallucinations. He saw things that weren't there. We have to wait till he becomes mentally better to give the get to write and give the get. Because why? The Gemara explains, Daita Shagishta, even when he said he was mentally competent, apparently mentally competent, before he became delusional, and said write the get for my wife, he probably was a little delusional already at that point, because it's something which doesn't happen in an instant, it happens gradually. So why don't we say the same thing over here? Right? If he, even when he's, right, if he's cheresh gomor, he's deaf mute, so he's lacking the das. And even if he's pikeach v'nischaresh, right, even the case where Shim Galil says, if it was pikeach, right, he was mentally well, and then he became deaf after he got married, right, maybe when he was pikeach, when he got married, he was lacking a little bit of das at that point also. So I think you have to figure out, what does it mean, das? When we say a cheresh shotav katan lack das, what is das are we talking about? Das means knowledge. What knowledge are we talking about? There's two types of knowledge. There's academic knowledge and there's social knowledge, right? Picking up social cues. Some people can be very smart in school, like I was, and not be good with social cues. I wasn't that good with social cues. Now I'm a lot better, but improve. Academically, I'm also pretty smart still. But the das we're talking about, right? You have Helen Keller. She was a deaf mute. She was smarter than a lot of people. She wrote these musical compositions. I don't know, did she invent Braille? I don't know who invented Braille, but she was really smart. She was really smart. And people say when you lose some senses, the other senses are even heightened. So academically, I understand the Shota, he's not thinking coherently. A Katan, maybe his knowledge, the older you get, the smarter you get. But a Cheresh, you can't hear, you can't speak, can be pretty mentally competent, maybe even smarter than regular people. So obviously the das we're talking about is not academic knowledge, it's social knowledge, social skills. Someone who is mentally ill doesn't have the same social skills, they're mentally off. If they're minors, they don't have the social skills of an adult, obviously. And a cheresh also, even though they might be like Helen Keller, but when you can't hear and you can't speak, it's very hard to get along socially and to pick up on social cues with other people. And that's the das we're talking about over here. Wherever the Torah says cheresh the katan are patur min mitzvos, it's talking about social knowledge. It's not talking about intellectual knowledge, it's talking about social knowledge. Now, the reason I'm saying that over here is because there's an important difference between a cheresh and a shota. A cheresh, right, they have some sort of knowledge, right? A shota katan lack both types of knowledge. Both lack both academic knowledge and social knowledge. A cheresh who can't speak and can't hear, like Helen Keller, could have academic knowledge, maybe even a heightened sense of academic knowledge, but social knowledge, they're off. So therefore, there's a kula. Rav says, the psak is that even though I can't hear and I can't speak, if I could write instructions, so we know that's clearly what he wants to do. That's clear. That's what the Gemara calls daita silusa, which is lucid knowledge. He has lucid knowledge. And for writing a get, Rav says that's enough. It's enough to have academic or coherent knowledge of what I'm doing. Coherency is the most important thing. And he has coherent knowledge, and that's good. And that's how we paskin. Now, even though the Gemara seems to say Tanakama argues that Rosh Hashanah, there is an opinion, the Gemara says at the end, that really Tanakama or Shimon is explaining the opinion of the Tanakama, which seems to be the maskana of the Gemara. Because the Gemara Benzion Gittin before the Mishnah, Ayin Aleph Beis, brings in the Dasar of Yitzchak. So Tanakama and Shimon really agree. They agree about what? They agree about the case that if he's a Pikeach, right, going into the marriage, and then he's Nescharesh, so then only in that case do we say that he could write a get to his wife. Why? Because if he was born a Cheresh, so if you're born a Cheresh, so you're lacking, I'm going to clarify what I said before, but I didn't say it 100% correctly. I'm going to say it correctly now, is that if you're born a Cheresh, right, you'll never pick up social skills. But if you're a Pikeach, I was saying that there was in a Cheresh Hadar in Rav's Halacha is that a Cheresh has some sort of academic knowledge. But with the Maskana, which seems to accord with Tanakam or Shmuel, the only case we allow, Rav's statement is qualified, I think, only in a case where when you got married, or at least at some point in your life you were Pikeach, you were born a Pikeach, and then you became deaf mute. If that's true, so you have the social skills, because at one point you were Pikeach, you meant like a regular person. You had social skills, and then you became the Scharish, and then you lost your ability to communicate. But you didn't forget about those social skills. So you had those social skills at one point in your life. So therefore, if he instructs to write a get, we know that he's able to do these things, right? Part of giving a get is not just academic knowledge, I'm married to her. Is we have to be sure emotionally, which social is tied to the emotion, socially, that you want to depart from your wife, that you want to destroy your house, you want to do that. You have to be emotionally invested. That's why a Cheresh Hadar can't work. They don't have das for a get, because they don't have social skills. But if at one point in his life he had social skills, you don't lose that. And therefore, if he can write it, somehow communicate that he wants to give it, it's okay. So Rav aligns with the Shem Galil and the Tanakama, the Maskana of the Gemara, only in the case where he had social skills at the beginning of his life, and then he became a Cheresh, because even though now he's a deaf mute, since he originally had those skills, the social skills, he's considered someone who has das. He has a social skills because he was born with the social skills. And even though now he can't speak or hear, but he could write, and he's socially acute, he's socially competent, and therefore he can make a good judgment about whether divorcing his wife or not. And that's the difference between Cheresh and a Shota, and the important difference also, as we said yesterday, possibly Rabbi Yochanan, that someone who's delusional, he becomes mentally incompetent, mentally ill, or partially mentally ill, delusional. The Gemara says Daita Shagishta, even when he's mentally competent, it was a gradual process. He already was a little delusional at that point, because that's by a shota. By a shota, right? It's a process. However, by a cheresh, if it was pikeach, he was born a competent person, then he lost his ability to hear and to speak. So that's something which happens right away. It happens automatically. We don't assume Daita Shagishta. We don't assume when he was a pikeach, his social skills were off. Once he was a pikeach, his social skills were there. Someone who became mentally impaired, probably his whole life he was missing social cues, and it became even worse when he became mentally ill. But someone who was born a pikeach had the good social skills, and when he came to nischaresh, he became deaf mute. That was something he just had, which changed everything 100%. And because he had learned social skills, if he can write the get, he understands enough emotionally and socially to divorce his wife. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you on the next one.